Hello, hello, friends. I have a real treat for everyone today. I have my really good friend I've known. Oh my gosh, since geez, let's see. I'm gonna date myself, but since like 2004, I've known Aminata Cham, who we met in Boston, and we went to school together in Cambridge. And she's just the most phenomenal person and a parent and just like human being and does all these different things. And I was like, I just want to invite her on and talk about also like change, how to navigate change. She's been through change. I've been through change. We've helped each other go through change. And she's all these great tips too on how to like navigate change as someone who's come from a different country, and then gone through, different challenges and like overcame them with amazing strength and resilience. And I was like, she needs to come on. We need to just chat. So, Aminata, hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, Janny, and for such a nice introduction. But I can say the same exact thing about you as well. You've been a really wonderful friend and really a gem in my life. So I'm grateful to be here to have the opportunity to talk to you here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. I know that you were like a lifesaver too during the pandemic, like just when it first hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to. You just feel the need to go talk to someone and just like be with friends, And I was like, and Aminata and I and some other friends were getting together on the weekends and just like meeting up and chatting about various things. And it's like that really pulled me through so much of 2020 and also part of 2021. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm like forever grateful. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of ask you, Aminata. So this is like the Made for Change podcast, and we talk about all kinds of changes that people go through from, voluntary, involuntary to all different kinds of life and career and relationship changes. And changes can be really hard, and I think like an expert writer on changes has called like major life changes, like life quakes, things that like really rattle you and make you question things. And then even really like what's considered minor change, like even if you decide to leave a job or something, that can be a big identity change. It could really also create unnerving like responses in people. So I just kind of want to talk to you like about, how have you sort of dealt with change, and what are some of the ways that like that you've gone through that, and just like, yeah, what, for listeners, and what you want to let them know. So
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think for me, what comes to mind right off the bat, it's one of the biggest changes that ever happened in my life to this day is moving from West Africa, from the Gambia, when I was, a little over 19. And I moved to the US for the first time in my life to leave my parents behind, most of my family. I had, a few of my brothers that I stayed with when I got here, but that was such a huge change for me in a different world.
yeah.
And so the impact was huge because all of a sudden I used to have, anything that's going on in my life, school, whatever, my whole family shows up. Like we have a crew, just all the time. And all of a sudden it's like people are at work, people are at
Yeah.
school, wherever, and I'm by myself. And anything I do, I can't celebrate with anyone. I'm by myself. And
Yeah.
back then we didn't really have like video chatting and all of this stuff.
Mhm.
So all I could do is get a calling card and call my family and talk and cry and tell my mom, but like everybody's family was there, their grandparents were there, their dog was there, and I was by myself. So that's just one example. But then I realized pretty quickly that, and with the advice of my parents, that it's wherever you are, you have to make the best of that situation, that life condition, whatever it is. And they're like, you're really lucky to be, alive and to have the opportunities you have, that there are other people that may be living with their parents that don't have it. And they just
Oh, yeah.
start to change my way of thinking.
Wow.
And so they just challenged me, make it possible to include us, make it possible to include everything that you want. And that's when I
Mhm.
really started to really find ways to include them. At the time I would have camera, like, the disposable cameras that you
Yeah.
buy. And I
Yeah.
would take it with me everywhere I went. I took pictures every time. If I could take a video, I would, but I took pictures of everything and I would share with them. And so it
Wow.
almost felt like they were in my life because it didn't matter how silly or what was going on. I was sharing it with them. And so I brought them with me everywhere. And so I just started to do that more and more. And before you knew it, like I was really coping with that to the point where I actually felt like I had more of a family connection than other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even
Um,
though you were so far away. Yeah.
right? Because I'm sending it to all of my family everywhere, not just my
Yeah.
parents. And then the other thing is finding a community and friends that were around me within the school community, within the work, the internship I had at the time. And I realized that, yes, I grew up in a world where family meant everything. Family is what you had. That was what surrounded you. But also it doesn't have to be blood to be family, right?
Oh,
And so I
100%.
found that in these people who are such positive people in my life, they were helping me navigate through this new world. Whenever it would be Thanksgiving, for example, I didn't have to think of, oh, well, I'm by myself and I don't have family. No, it's like we did Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
So there was so much Friendsgiving. We would
Yeah.
all cook potluck. We would all go and share and laugh and play games all night. And it was just those kinds of things where I had to have a mind shift to understand that, yes, my reference point of family dinner is like all my relatives, but no, family is the people that love and care about you.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And
know?
so at what point did that shift for you when you started to realize this? Was it like after you've been in, the US a while, or at some point you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna open up myself, or yeah.
It was really, I would say, after the first few years. Like the first
Yeah.
the first year was really tough, but because at first I wasn't really in school. I was just like trying to get, all the paperwork and everything
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a community. So all I had was like the phone call and,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes and things like that. But once I still had the encouragement of my parents.
Right.
And then I start to meet people at the career center or at the public library or all these places. And I'm like, actually, like, who said family has to be like, your blood
Exactly.
relative who lives next door?
Yeah.
That's when the shift happened. And I can tell you tons of stories. I'll give you a quick example.
Yeah.
I didn't have a car, so I had to drive. I had to wake up super early, like 4 a.m., catch the bus, and then go into, because it's a small town in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I had to go into the public square
Yeah.
and wait until 6. Then the bus comes, and then I go to my school, and then I take classes starting at 8. So I really was hours ahead of when I needed to be at school because otherwise I'll be late.
Right.
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 So what I did is I would get to the public square and all the restaurants and coffee shops are closed, but there was one of them that had these two people, wonderful,
Yeah.
who worked there, and they would say to me, "You want to come in?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then they'll let me come into the restaurant, sit there, and they'll just have conversations with me while one of them makes the bagels and the other one prepares like the breakfast section.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget them, Roxanne and Vinny. And so
Oh.
they became like family because every morning I spent almost 2 hours in their shop where I'm just waiting for the bus to come. And that's kind of like when it shifted because I didn't wake up feeling like, oh, I'm going to spend 4 hours in transit, like standing around to wait for a bus. I was going through these friends.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And especially getting up at 4 a.m. I mean, how hard. And then just to go
Yeah.
and to be in a welcoming environment, and you just get to know those people. Like, it's like you said, they become like family. That's amazing. What a story. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Yeah, I do remember. I just think it takes so much courage, I think, for anyone, immigrants, to come from another country and like not know anything, and it's not just like, oh, for travel tourism, like you are uprooting yourself and then like having to learn the whole new system, because my parents did the same, coming from Taiwan. And I remember too that like this is back in the day where there's no like mobile phones whatever, and so my mom would miss her father, my granddad, so much. But back then they would just have cassette tapes, so like he would like record some voice message and like mail it to us, and then she would like listen to it and then also get like some sort of messages or letter. I think she would write letters back and he would
Yeah.
record cassettes. It was like the most like endearing thing. But that just goes to show how hard it is to be away from people, and then to forge a new like
Yeah.
world for yourself, like to rely on people
Yeah.
that you're around, in your new place. Like, so yeah, it just shows how much courage you have and like
Oh, thank you.
openness, to adapt.
Yeah.
um that's so great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so, and then, after having been through that, then, and then we, kind of more recently, like, the pandemic hit, and being a parent. And I mean, how do you think you have been able to kind of navigate that, and did, the strategies, or like the things that you used, and kind of the mindset you had, coming from the Gambia, West Africa, for instance, like, did that help you kind of cope with other changes like the pandemic, or, later changes? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say a huge part of how I coped stems really from my upbringing,
Yeah.
right? And just the resilience with which we're expected to move through life. It's
Right.
like nothing is, and any burden put on you is actually put on you because you can handle it. Like that's like my dad's like mentality. He always would tell us, no burden that's on you that's too hard to bear, and that's kind of hard to swallow when you're a kid, because you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it really helped. And so no matter what situation I find myself, I'm always like, okay, this is where I am, but what can I do?
Yeah.
And I think, again, a huge part of me being an immigrant, having to navigate the system here and the world here, helped prepare me. So when COVID hit, I had already kept pace with when it was no longer calling cards. It was WhatsApp. It was, all of these. It was, so I actually was very used to talking to family members from all over the world via these mediums. Right. And I never felt like I was making an extra effort to keep in touch with the people I love. It was like the way I lived. Right. So when COVID happened, and all of a sudden we're all having to be virtual. To me, it was just like, oh, well, now I didn't have a Zoom account, but now I have a Zoom account. Like that was how
you were already doing so much of, I mean, virtual, because you were keeping in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one big example I would say, and I've talked about this with you, is I then got a Zoom account, and I shared it with, again, the same people that I was keeping in touch with anyway. And so, and it was so wonderful because my son was really young. He was just 6 at the time. And I would get a notification when anybody jumps on, and then we would just jump on and talk about nothing. It could be a niece, a nephew, it could be anyone. And so and I know you can relate to this, when people start having Zoom birthdays and things, it was like normal. So that really helped. And the other thing is really, again, coming back to the Saturday group that you mentioned that we had, having friends, again, from various parts of our life transitions, and come together and talk to each other and be a supportive group. I was lucky to be a part of 2 of those. One was the one we had, right, that you invited me to. And it was so it was just such a free, a safe space, I would say, to come and just talk about what you went through, and highlights, lowlights, and get advice. But I also joined the one called Good News Jam that my friend Ian was running. And it was like, we're all in a pandemic. There's so much grief. There's so much sadness that we can't control, and stress.
Oh, yeah.
But we jumped on this Good News Jam, and this format was that each person shares whatever your good news is in the past week, days, whatever. And then everyone listens, and then you have someone acknowledge you, and we all celebrate you in the midst of everything we're going through. And then we all cheers to it, and then we go on to the next person. And so it just became such a good place to go to after whatever you went through. So it's things like that that really kept me going. And then last but not least is having the supportive parents, the fellow parents that we're all going through this online virtual learning, and all the hardships of having toddlers and early, first, second graders, and they just having to be stuck at home, and just the uncertainties without having the vaccine then. So that was very helpful. We all just came up with very creative ways to stay in touch, to safely get together. And the trust that we had, I think, was very paramount. As parents, we all felt like, if I'm not there, as long as this other parent is there, it's fine. And that is sometimes hard to come by. So I think it, to anyone listening, if you have any sort of network or friends or fellow parents, lean into them, because that's really what helped me.
Oh my gosh, I just love that you mentioned that, because I mean, just even yesterday, we had snow days here in Dallas, and I had some back-to-back meetings, and David also had meetings, and yeah, we had a neighbor who was just like, "Let me help you out, send over your son, like, we can watch him." And I mean, they're just playing with Legos, little boy. They're just like, okay, they're just gonna go and play with the Legos. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's so incredible. Like that was just so life-saving for us, because we were like, okay, we don't have to worry about that noise. My daughter was still home, but she could play on some other things.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the kind of that trust, and how generous, to offer that, and just parents coming together, and offering each other that support, I think is so key. And I'm just beyond grateful. And so I was like, oh, I would, and also like we want to, have, their kids over, and whenever they need it. And, so yeah, it's like, you need that support.
Yeah. And I have to just say, for example, like the fact that you and I talk, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes like we have no time to breathe with all that's going on with work and family
Yeah.
and kids. But at some point, even if it's at night, we find the time and we just talk to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And just having that is
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's, how
I
great.
love that's been life-saving for me too. It's just like, even just like hearing your voice, and even like through busy times, because like sometimes we'll go
Yeah.
through times like we're like, oh my gosh, but then when we do connect, it's just like old times, and even just text, like I'll get a little like, oh, like, and how's how's everything going, and it's just like a little quick text. It just means so much. And I think that like the friendships like that we have have sustained me too, like through this, because otherwise it feels like you said, like uncertainty, and there's like all these uncontrollable factors, so like, what is that foundation? It's like
Mhm.
friendships and relationships, and that trust and that love, so I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, for
It's
me.
so true, and it reminds me of the just as we live in a predominantly individualistic culture,
Yeah.
right? Where that's not like frowned upon. It's like okay,
Yeah.
Like I
Right.
remember little things like when I was growing up, like when my mom ran out of salt or lemon or any little thing, she just says, "Oh, go next door to Auntie so and so and tell them we need some lemon." And then you just walk over and grab the thing and bring it over, and you know. And I remember like there are times when I'm cooking and I run out of stuff. I got to turn off the stove. I got to get in my car and I got to drive to the store. And, and I'm talking pre-COVID, right?
Right.
But I think one of the positive ways in which I look at this pandemic and what it has meant is difficult, for the most part, but it has also allowed us to tap more into our humanity.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, if I needed anything now, I'm not gonna say, let me drive, let me go. No, I'm
Right.
thinking, oh, the neighbor I have next door or
Yeah.
the elderly person, like I actually would rather go back to how I grew up, because
Yes.
during this pandemic,
Yeah,
we
it's
just
all
had
about,
to
yeah,
reset.
the community. Yeah. And by the way, I know that you also like get groceries for your neighbors, and like in the 12 inches of snow, you're like trudging to get food. So how kind is that? But I do want to also let people know about that Saturday group that we had, because so it was myself, Aminata, and we had a few other friends, and they had different kind of expert backgrounds. Like one was an MD, PhD, but mainly we came together more just as friends, and just to talk, open conversation. And people were welcome to bring other people, and we would just talk about like current events or just other even topics. And that was like so incredible to me. I looked forward to every weekend, and I knew I could like have a safe space to talk. And I also know, Aminata, you mentioned the safe the Good News Jam. I know that you had mentioned it before too, and how amazing like groups like this could,
Yeah.
form and be like such a space for us to be welcome, and to feel like, yeah, we might be going through these life changes, and like the pandemic, we don't know what's happening, but in this particular safe space, like
Yeah.
we can feel, okay, like we can bring ourselves, we don't have to think about the uncertainty of the world. and we can just bring like, I mean, I love the idea of like bringing good news, like just and celebrating each other.
And I can give you like a quick example of some of the things that came out of that see, this is the normal life. I got my boss just showing up over there. Over you, say hi, say hi.
Hi.
All right, go downstairs. Okay, talk to you later.
Right,
it's just a part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the examples I can give you is, remember how like now it's like the big quit, right? People, like a lot of people are leaving their jobs and
Yes,
all of that.
resignation.
But yeah, but in 2020, especially in part of 2021, early on, it was people losing their jobs, right? It was like the pandemic that disrupted so many industries and so many people just couldn't go to work, right? And so part of Good News Jam, we had individuals who lost their jobs and they would come to Good News Jam.
Wow.
And at first I was thinking like, when somebody's talking about, well, I'm still job searching. So, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is going to be so hard for us to pull good news out of this, but actually no, there's always some things that have happened. And sometimes they get employment through the community that we are forming in this group, even though you're in Minnesota and I'm in like, Columbus or wherever. So yeah, I think that was really, really what I found fascinating, because we all just in our own world think that is more negative and painful and stressful until we share,
And I talk about this in one of my episodes, is like I talk about getting fired. Like I think 10 years ago there was a job where I was fired, and there's so much shame and I don't want to tell anyone. And it's like I think about having a group like this, and you just be like, it's, first of all, it's like so normal. And it's nothing to do with you. It's like this is just other things going on. But I love that, like, there is a space where you can come and like talk about that and be like, and people can be like, they can all each share, right? And be like, I've been fired too. And it's not the end of the world. And it's like, you know what? It's also like not about you and your worth and like how well you did. Sometimes it's just other things. You know what I mean? And guess what? It's all temporary. You're going to find something. You are going to find something, but we're here for you. Like,
I know. It's so cool. I remember when my friend Ian, who again he founded the Building Bridges leadership. He got some chickens, like in his little farm, and they had names of his kids. So sometimes like he talks about those, and the good news is that this happened with the animals and things like that. It's so cool. I know, it's the best. We talk about our plants and how we're keeping them alive.
And I think that too is like, it doesn't mean that we can't grieve or we don't have sadness, because there's always going to be like sadness in life, and also even with changes, there is a grieving period for certain major changes. Depends on what it means to you. But at the same time, I think but at the same time, it's like you can't just for that moment shift a little bit and just like it's almost like moving your your vision, right? Like okay, like sometimes we get tunnel vision in our lives, like this is the only thing that matters, but really just moving a little bit, just be like, oh well, look, I could just for this moment focus on the chickens. Or I got out of bed today, like I put on my clothes, like great. Because that is a big deal. Like, I mean, for my particular moment, like it's huge that I was able to like get out of bed, and like put on some clothes and made some coffee for myself. That was a big thing, I love that. Well, great. And so, I mean, we talked about sort of, work. So pandemic parenting, and I'm working as a parent too. So, I mean, how has that been for you? Because, there's been shifts and changes and.
I think that's one of the areas where it's just been really tough. And I think one of the big reasons why it's tough is because it's just prolonged. I mean, it's just like, it's just every day feels just like one long day. Right. But what has again helped is one is just the pandemic forced employers, I feel like, to have to recognize that, like what we thought was work-life balance may not have been work-life balance, right? Because instead of parents just trying to leave all the chaos at home and dress up nicely and walk into the office where you don't see that, now we didn't have a choice, just like what happened with Abraham. Like it's showing on camera, like,
like this is me, this is my life.
Right. And so it became like it forced really, and force is not the best word I'm looking for, but it promoted the awareness.
Oh yeah.
of
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm actually dealing with human beings, and I'm not the only one that actually has this issue where I get ready to start and then bang, so
Yeah.
anything can happen, especially with technology,
Yeah.
it's like, that's a
Yeah.
whole nother level.
Yeah.
So exactly. So
Yeah.
for me, as a parent, again, just understanding that I have to have some compassion for myself. And I think you've really helped a great deal as a reminder, whenever we exchange text messages and things like that. I just put so much on myself, like, oh, I should have done this, or I didn't do this, I didn't finish that, or I picked him up late, or I forgot to pick him up, or, all of these things, like just taking a breather and saying, oh, I'm doing it. I am doing all of these things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just not being so hard on myself, because a lot of the weight that I carried when it came to the stress that I had was in part because of how I just was so, it's not good enough. Like whatever I do, it's not good enough.
Yes, I totally relate to that. And that happens with my clients too. And I think it's like, it's so common, I think, because for women, like, we're used to like doing it all, we
Yeah.
want to do it all, and it's like, well, how do we know when we've done it? Like, and I think sometimes, it's that voice in our head that tells us like, oh, what you're doing is not enough. You should be doing this better or that better. And it's like, the pandemic has really shown us like we have limitations. We've got health limitations,
Yeah.
and we have time limitations. And look, our families, we're attached to people. Like we're not just these like, individual robots that go into work and like get work done.
I know, although it feels like it some days, but yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say that enough. And I think another thing that I've done in 2021, it took a while for me to finally do it, but it's to understand that just because I don't have my commute and I start early, and then I can stay late because I don't have to leave, I'm working from home, doesn't mean I need to burn myself out.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really learned to accept the fact that I can only do so much during the day. I can only be productive for so long, and then I've got to stop. I've got no one, it's not like the world's going to be over if I don't keep working until midnight. And so one of the ways in which I forced myself to do that, because it was hard, was to delete Microsoft Teams or WebEx or all of these extra tools off of my phone, because my phone is my personal phone. My job didn't give it to me. So I deleted all of these work things from my phone, and I don't even have work email on my phone. And so when I sign out, I signed out. It's Friday. And so Saturday and Sunday, I'm still thinking, oh, if I should just go and finish that thing. I should just, but I'm like, nope. I fight it. I'm like, let's try this. And when I would go into work on Monday, yes, it's a little bit stressful because now I'm like, oh, I can't stop. There's so much to do. But then I'm like, I prefer to have a busy Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, but then still sign out at the end of the day and have my nights and weekends, than to have a busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday anyway, but then work later and then work some weekends, So I think eliminating that, that need to just keep up and just get it done and finish it and do it later, that helped me a great deal.
Yeah. And I love that you actually deleted it, because I think sometimes it can be so tempting to just like, you think, oh, I just won't look. I've signed up. But then I know for me, because we have Slack everywhere, and I'm like, oh, but I'm quickly and so now, like, I mean, I haven't deleted mine. That's a great idea on my phone, but I do put it on, like, I've learned to put it on like, away, and then like the notifications off for all weekend. But like, I know people that, don't want to do that because they're worried about like when they do come back, they get so busy. But I love that he's like, well, I'd rather have a busy Monday, Tuesday, and then at least have had that time on the weekend to like truly replenish myself, and that is so key.
I know. And another ripple effect of the pandemic is that before, when we were going in the office, we pass each other in the hallway, like we see each other in the kitchen and talk and things like that. And it wasn't as like expected that you have to respond as soon as somebody pings you, as soon as you get the message, right? Whereas now that's how it is. So even when I'm on vacation, I get people sending me things that, pings and things where because we've been responding.
Right.
We've been
Right.
responding when we're not supposed to be. And so I
Right.
think the nice thing for me is having one day my manager actually recognized that
Yeah.
because she emailed me while I was on PTO
Yeah.
and I didn't respond for 2 weeks straight. When I came back, she
Right.
actually in our team meeting said to everybody, I just want to commend Aminata for not responding. So I know she wasn't checking her email. And I was like, that's it.
I love it. That's a great idea. And that's just to validate that, right? Like, yeah, and we should all kind of like turn it off. And especially when you're on vacation, like we don't need to be responding to emails. We need to just be resting, like truly taking that vacation day. I love it. That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. So like having compassion for yourself, I think is so key, right? And like, being kind to ourselves and recognizing like when the stress starts to get overloaded, right? Like whether it's just to really just shut off on the weekends, because I think it can accumulate and turn into burnout,
Yeah.
but being kind to ourselves all along the whole process. And then also just like making sure that we rest when we need to, right? Throughout the week, right? Taking that space for ourselves. So, I mean, I think working as a parent already was challenging pre-COVID, but now I think, like you said, like the work life boundary isn't so clear, especially when you work from home, work virtually, or even when you do go to the office, right? It's like, it just feels like you have so much to do all the time, right? And so how do we sometimes we have to do that. We have to draw the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And I just add quickly before you go on this
yeah,
quote I read very recently
yeah.
that said procrastination is an emotional reaction to stress. And I
Mm.
felt attacked. I was like, that's me.
It's like your kids are talking about me. Yeah.
Right?
It's
I
so
mean, it's so
fascinating.
true.
That
So
is
I
so
like
fascinating.
some days I say that to myself. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
If I'm just putting it off and putting it
Yeah.
off, like the laundry or the whatever, the thing that I really need to
Yeah.
do, it's not
Yeah.
just because I don't want to do it. It's because I just have these other things and that's my emotional reaction to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it might be the thing that I kind of procrastinate on things that I'm trying to avoid a negative feeling that's attached to
Mhm.
that thing, I'm like, because I
Exactly.
know when I do that, I'm not going to feel good doing it,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, I'd rather just not feel good. Like I'd rather just avoid it. But that's true. And I think a lot of it is like, yeah, I think sometimes with stress, and I think burnout is so common, especially in this pandemic world. I mean, people, essential workers are going through it, and even people that work from home, and I think it does increase your desire to procrastinate for all, because sometimes you just shut down. Your body can just be like, I don't want to do anything else. Like
Yeah.
literally just
Mhm.
gonna sit over
Yeah.
here and just like type.
I know. And I think the one last thing is like really I think a redefinition of what PTO means, of what vacation time means. It doesn't mean I need to have tickets to fly somewhere. It doesn't mean I have activities planned to
Yeah.
go-kart racing or something. It just means
No.
I'm taking a breather.
Yeah.
And so finding that I'm okay having days off, multiple days off, where I'm just not doing or going anywhere.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Sometimes you just need to stay put and just
Mhm.
be still. Like that could be the best rest,
Yeah,
right? The staycation.
exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
Hashtag staycation.
I love it. I love it. Now, how do you think? And you talked a little bit about this before, but how do you think your cultural backgrounds and views, and also like, I mean, they've sort of changed over time too,
Yeah.
but how do you think that that's sort of helped you cope in general with these changes that have been ongoing? So,
Yeah, I would say that the fact that having people in your life that are like your people, it's like a normal thing. I don't know if I can articulate this very well, but like having friends is great. Like in my culture growing up,
yes,
you're gonna have friends, you have tons of friends, but
right,
there's an expectation that you really do need to have a few that are like your people,
yeah,
like you
okay,
trust them,
right,
right?
right,
And so when I grew up, I knew that I always had, I'm like a social butterfly, like wherever I
yes,
go, I have
yeah,
friends, family, you name it. But there are certain individuals, either one sibling or one
mm,
or two classmates. Like there's always like a very, very few, a handful of people that I can go to those people anytime
mm,
because they're me and I'm them. Like we're just transparent with each other
Yeah.
and we're supportive with each other. And I think coming from a culture that really emphasizes that, it's unspoken, it's unsaid, but everybody understands that you have that in your life, right?
Right.
And that was helpful for me because I wasn't used to therapy. I didn't have a therapist. I didn't have all these things.
Right.
But I have, for example, my older sister that I talk to her about everything and she
Yeah.
talks to me about everything. And
Yeah.
just having had that always and
Yeah.
finding myself in this crazy, era of
Right.
COVID, I
Right.
felt like I just tapped into that,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel, because sometimes this happens, I didn't feel guilty that I'm unloading my stress onto
Oh,
my
yeah.
sister, for example, right? Because
Right.
we always have this where I am you, you're me, we're just helping each other.
Yeah.
So I
And you
think
can just tell her everything. I mean, you just tell her how you feel. Like, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Like if I'm dealing with something, I don't have to boil it in my head by myself and just go crazy. Like
Right.
there are safe spaces, is what I'm trying to say. Just coming
Yeah.
back, having a safe, trusted, people, right? And I do this, like I share with you, when it's like I'm contemplating something at work or
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
opportunity or something like that. Like it's nice to have someone that you can trust. That's one thing. And the other thing is just, again, like coming back to understanding that you don't measure your life or your place or your situation against like other people. Like we're
Oh,
all different. We all have
mhm.
a different destiny and everything like that. So my culture also emphasizes that. So whatever it is you're going through, don't start measuring.
Yeah.
Don't start saying
Yeah. We call
the
it
other
compare and
person.
despair. Compare and despair.
Exactly. And so I really try to refrain from that. I mean, it's hard sometimes, but I try to refrain from it. Like, if I'm a divorced single parent, and
Yeah.
that's my life right now.
Right.
But that,
Right.
that has nothing to do with another friend of mine who happens to still be married or this and
Right.
that. So
Right.
focusing on that unnecessarily just piles on
Oh, yeah.
more
Oh, yeah.
anxiety or stress on me and pressure. And so I think I'm attributing to my culture because really it's where that was normalized to me, that
Wow. Okay. I
you
love
can't
that.
just be like, look at them, look at them. No, this is
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
we all have wonderful things that we have in our lives that other people wish they had and vice versa. But that's just because, like my dad says, even your fingers aren't the same length.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every single one of them is a different length. So how can you
Yeah.
expect everything or you and everyone around you to have the same exact situation?
Yeah. And that's a fascinating too, because I think the culture is like focuses a lot, like you were saying, on the community, on the family. But at the same time, it's also like, well, we're all different from each
Yes,
other.
exactly.
Like we're all unique in our journeys. And I think it's so true, because I think social media also just kind of amplifies that issue, because like sometimes you think, oh, this person has this, and it's so easy to filter things through social media, right? And I get it too, because I mean, you don't want to see someone just like doing mundane, ordinary things on social media. So they'll like edit that out sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the whole life of anyone,
Mhm.
and no matter what, life you have, whether married, divorced, single, dating, whatever it is, it's like, I think that you're always going to have your struggles. Like everyone has their own struggles, like, and I totally agree with you about that compare and despair, about like,
Yeah.
sometimes you just like, you have to say like, yeah, but this is where I am right now. This is
Mhm.
my life.
Yeah.
And, and I'm on my journey,
Yeah. And show up as your true self. Like you just will not be let down by your true self. And that's, yeah.
Yes, yes, 100%. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that those are such great. I mean, so far we've talked about dealing with change, like focusing on, creating your own world, people of support that is not necessarily family by blood, but there's a great support system, and that could be through groups like these online groups, or you mentioned, um, you know, um, the a good
That's
news
good.
jam, for instance, groups, right? And then also like having compassion for yourself, knowing when
Mhm.
to rest, taking that break and like just shutting it all off. And it doesn't have to be flying somewhere, could be
Yeah.
staying home. Yeah.
Mhm.
But just really rejuvenating. And then being compassionate, like our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves, really being compassionate with ourselves, that we also don't have to put extra pressure to try to do it all. I mean, I think society does enough of that for moms and
Yeah.
parents. We don't need that. And also just like, and you mentioned, the not comparing and despairing. So like focusing on our own journey, being true to who we are, right? Is that kind of like cover, I'm just kind of summarizing kind of like some of these Aminata isms. Like
Janny isms.
Yes, I love it. Yeah. Is there anything else that maybe that you want to add, or your experiences having gone through change and what you've like discovered and learned?
Yeah, I think coming back to just what I mentioned briefly, that I'm a divorced single parent. I think I never saw myself as somebody who will be divorced, let alone single parent, right? I grew up with the fantasy, right? Get married and have been together forever. But when that happened, I think if I didn't have my son, I probably will be in a different place. But because I had this little life and this person that I loved, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know I could love so much.
Oh yeah.
I think that allowed me to really have a more sort of level-headed perspective about the whole thing, like a more sane one, instead of just thinking, oh, it's the end of the world, I'm divorced, and what am I going to do? And no, I was like, for lack of a better phrase, it felt like I was seeing clearly when I decided to be divorced. And so what that helped is I don't even remember feeling like, oh, it's going to be a single parent household, or how am I going to do it? Or my son's going to be missing a male figure, or like all of the things that I'm all fairly certain I would have been worried about if I didn't actually have my son. But he just helped reprioritize my life, and my desires and what I really value in my future, And so I think that change was one huge one in my life, and I really didn't expect to just have the perspective I had. And so actually I saw it as a really a lot of it was positive to me, and I'll give you a couple examples. Is the fact that I have my life with my son. It's the two of us. We're in sync. We don't really have family around, but we have a lot of people who love us. But he and I have such a good system, such a routine, like it's me and him, that I can pick him up from school, and then we stop somewhere, and then we stop somewhere else, and we run an errand, and we do stuff, and we sing in the car, and we do so much, and then we come home. Like I don't have to come home and cook dinner and do this and do that. Like, you know what I mean? Just the flexibility of just being ourselves and doing what we want to do when we want to do it, or canceling, and no problem, right? And so just that's one of the good things. And the other thing is, because, I'm by myself with him. My brothers, my male friends, my dad, my uncles, all of them are in his life. And especially in the age of COVID, he talks to my brother in Scotland about animals and about birds, about all this stuff. They send each other stuff. And he talks to another uncle in Pennsylvania about the Patriots and the Super Bowl and sports and all of these. And then my other brother does math homework with him. And, and so it's like, he has a lot of really strong male figures in his life, COVID or not, that are helping to raise him. And I think that is very rich compared to my childhood idea, which is like a dad, and a dad is like the superhero that does everything, So I think that's one of the ways in which I feel like this huge life change that happened to me ended up being actually not so bad, because there are all of these wonderful things that my son is getting and I'm getting, right? And the peace of mind,
Yeah. And I think that's so great, because it always takes a village, I think, to raise kids. Even if you are married. I mean, like our our preschool teachers like literally potty trained my daughter. It was like we didn't even do any of it. Like I can't believe she like just potty trained her. But yeah, I mean, I think it takes a village no matter what, right? And I think also like nowadays, I feel like there's all kinds of configurations of family, And I think even when we were children, it was like different. And even back then, I mean, like, my parents are divorced, and it was like hush hush when they divorced, when I was in college. But I think nowadays it just seems like there's all these different, like I see, we have, like in my son's class, a lot of single parents. We have two dads, two moms. We have sometimes also grandparents raising the kids, and or could be like a different caregiver, sometimes nannies raise the kids. But anyway, all different kinds of family configurations. And I think what you said too is like the main thing is that they're getting that love from that village. So whatever that village is, it could be blended families, step parents, whatever. I mean, as long as like they're feeling it, like Ibra feels like, oh yeah, like I know I always have people to talk to. I know people love me,
Yeah.
and so like that's what's most important.
And I think you said the key word there, caregiver.
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily the person who is like the biological, it's the caregiver that matters. That's what it's about. You
That's totally true. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. And I also love that you said that you have the flexibility, the freedom
Yeah.
to do what you want. You're modeling great things too, because you're like, I mean, I think for your son, you're modeling like, yeah, like I'm not going to always like be cooking, and I'm going to do what we want. And that's great for him because he has the freedom to like do what he wants, I mean, within structure, with the parental structure, but he's like, he's like, I see my mom like doing stuff that makes her happy, like actually doing things that she wants to do. So I can do that too. Like, like that's so great.
It's nice. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. That's so great. But yeah, I mean, I think like, wow, there's just been so much wisdom brought here and just like about, change. And I think for me too, I think it's just that recognizing that it's okay to also like, to me, I mean, I think to grieve, to feel bad, life is not always about trying to find silver linings, but sometimes we can shift the focus, for that moment, and to like create spaces for ourselves where we like can just like take a glimpse of, something that is good in our lives for that moment, and I think that being surrounded by people like yourself, people that are like, open and loving and compassionate and like there to support you and cheer you on is like so essential. I think, especially in our society, which can be, very individualistic, but we have seen the pandemic, like you said, has brought that humanity and that like collective mentality from out of people. So yeah.
And I'm very grateful for you because I feel like you've been a coach. I mean, yes, you coach, you do coaching, but I get to benefit from that, from being your friend for as long as I've known you, really. And during some of my roughest times, even a text from you, like you really good at just checking on me or just saying, I know we're busy, but it would be great if we could catch up,
Yeah. And I feel the same too. I think for you, it's like, I mean, you've been that stable, like that friend. I'm like, oh my gosh, like we talk about all kinds of things. Like it's just like that support system. And even like a text or just hearing your voice and like just phone calls. And I mean, it's meant the world to me because, you are in Boston and I'm in Dallas, but I also know we were to see each other in person, and when we will, it's going to just be like old times. Yeah. Because like when we first met too, I think I remember meeting you at the library, like, this is back in Cambridge, and I think it was like 2004, but it was like, it's just like that click. It's just like, I'm so friendly.
I found the note that I wrote to you the first time we met. Remember? Really? That's great. It's like so crazy. But yeah, I remember because you talked about something that was related to the Gambia, because you spent some time in the Gambia. Yes, and I was like, I can't really interrupt, like she's talking. So I hand wrote, hi, Janny. My name's Aminata. I'm from the Gambia, exclamation point, like whatever. And then you read it, and then you wrote on the back of it, so now I still have a little note, because we were like, yeah, we have to know each other. And it just, the rest is history.
I know, that's how I felt like instantly. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like get to know this like dynamic and vibrant and beautiful woman. And I was like, I need to, and then I got you on the phone also with a friend, I think on the phone with someone that I knew that was also like, it's been a lot longer time than I had in the Gambia, but I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's so fun. Yeah. So much fun. That's so great. I do want to give some time just to quickly say, if someone wants to like talk to you, about your experiences or has questions, what is the best way to reach you? And then also I wanted to just do one little final plug, and you can just kind of for that Good News Jam and that Building Bridges Academy. So.
Yeah. So to reach me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/Aminata Cham. And maybe I can give you the exact spelling.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, my friend Ian, who again is the founder of Building Bridges Leadership, and he does a lot of work, facilitating various different types of workshops, working with companies, in a lot of like, the development work and some of those trainings that a lot of corporate organizations are interested in. And he's just a very compassionate person. Yeah. And so he has the Good News Jam, which again, if you go to Building Bridges Leadership, you can find more information about it.
Wow.
But it's yeah, it's awesome.
That's so awesome. And we can just kind of look up the Building Bridges Academy. Just it's a website on the
Yeah.
website, right? Okay.
Yeah, and it is exactly buildingbridgesleadership.com.
Leadership.com. Okay, perfect, perfect. And I do want to just conclude with one final question for Yamanata, because I was like, when you talked about being true to yourself, what helps you to ground and just be true to yourself? And I know that it sounds like such a simple, like be true to yourself. But sometimes, I think, we can get lost in life, especially when there's like a lot of changes and
Yeah.
shuffles in life. How do we stay true to ourselves?
Yeah, for me, it's one simple thing is to
Okay.
not hang on to grudges.
Ah,
Because
yeah.
I'm so, I'm such an empath, and I'm so the emotions are like right there on my sleeve, everything. And so
Yeah.
what ends up happening is I deviate from my true self, or what I really want to do,
Mm,
or where I want to be, if I hold on to grudges, because it just derails me.
yeah.
It literally derails me from myself.
Yeah.
And so I found that as like the best piece of advice. Just
Yeah.
do not. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. You're
Right.
upset about something or situations, but just try to practice to not hold on to grudges,
Yeah.
especially not for too long, because it just eats at you.
Oh
And
yeah, and it does. Yeah, like it does kind of like you said. I love that, derail
yeah,
yourself from yourself.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Aminata. I love always, as always, chatting with you and just like talking. And our friendship has really sustained me. And I know that our listeners, whoever's listening, is just going to find so much value in this conversation. Just being along for the ride.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Janny.
Thank you so much.
Talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.